for the first time ever, welcome to the High Tech Podcast with three people on screen at the same time. This is one of your hosts, William Illingworth, joined by my co-host, that way, Joshua
I'm over here on the screen.
There we go.
I would like to clarify, we've had three people on the podcast before.
But
and
not
four, but not at the immediate intro.
Not at the immediate beginning.
Yeah, not at the immediate beginning.
We are joined by Chris Crosdale. What's up there?
I like seeing you try to figure out where to point. This is
great. Chris, now that I've introduced you, hold on a second. I'm just joking. High Tech Podcast is brought to you by Harness Tech, and we are here with our social media manager. So really, we should have him lead us off with our social media and our social media pitch, but we decided to be kind and not do that to Chris this time. Yeah, there you go.
The ominous
So if you are not familiar, folks, please do follow us and subscribe on all the socials. That's at High Tech Podcast or High Tech Pod. Depends on the place.
It's probably Chris's fault, but it's fine. No,
I wish. Yep, I wish
it happens.
If you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, email us inbox at hightechpod.us. That's most of us have access to it at this point. I typically manage that, but Chris might see it. Now there's another face behind everything. And of course, our website, hightechpod.us. I doubt that'll be the last time you hear our social media during the episode. And of course, at the beginning of every episode, because we want you to like, subscribe, and follow. That'd be great. It helps us grow, doesn't it, Chris?
It sure does.
Hey, excellent. So what's really special to me about this moment and this episode, introducing Chris, is that we are now the team. For the longest time, everything High Tech Pod has been just me and Josh, and Chris has been on the team now for 2 or 3 months. I don't even know at this point. He's counting.
We'll say 3 months.
3 months. 3 months it is.
3.5. Who's counting?
Yeah.
But it's been great. You're more the face behind, but we're now inviting you to be the face in front as well. So before I ramble further, Chris, could you tell us just like in one sentence? No, I'm joking. Tell us a little bit about yourself, right? Like, what's your background? How did you get into this? Actually, you have one word and you have 3 seconds to think of it. 3, 2, 1.
Finn.
He got it. Okay. What does Finn mean?
I actually don't know. I see it in movies. I thought it was a cool thing to say.
That bit at the end of a movie, Finn means end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Now I know. So
we're here at the beginning and Chris is at the end. We get it now.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe a few more words. That might do it better. Yeah, maybe a few more.
What's your background getting into social media?
Yeah. So I would say I grew up on social media. I'm a 90s baby. I'm a millennial. And I think my first touch point of social media was MySpace.
Yes.
Yes.
I had a MySpace page. I used it 24/7 in high school, and then I segued to Facebook and Twitter in college, and then I kind of dabbled in what's that one? You know what, off the top of my head, it's blue. It's Tumblr. I was a heavy Tumblr user. I was like addicted to it. I was on there all the time. And then
the proto Reddit.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I actually from that is where I found Reddit and got involved with that. And then of course Instagram and TikTok and all of the other channels.
What are those? Residential Grandpa. Just wanted to,
These are social media channels that we use to connect. And
Reddit came first. Reddit came out in 2005 and Tumblr in 2007. Here I was thinking Tumblr came first. Huh?
Well, I found Tumblr first. So
yeah.
I grew up on using social media, and then I learned how to market with social media in college, and since college or post college, I've been a social media specialist, coordinator, manager at different companies, and I'm doing it now presently full time and otherwise. So it's been a part of my life pretty much most of it.
I want to use that as a quick bit to, it's not like the perfect Venn diagram of interests, but maybe all of our listeners are into like soul, R&B, hip hop music, like your music, right? So that's one of your big things in social. Your personal brand is your music and your artistry, like, right? Isn't Macario your handle on screen? Isn't that like your brand? What's that?
Yes, that's my personal music artist brand, Macario, however you want to say it. Sure. I'm also a musician, dancer, songwriter, rapper, kind of creative, and I love music. I compose, I sing, I write, I play piano and saxophone, learning guitar and bass currently. Yeah, I'm super into R&B and hip hop and pop, and some neo soul, which is then transferred into my music that I put out personally.
What don't you do though? No, like after all that list, what don't you do? I didn't know about the instruments and everything.
Yeah, I was in band in middle and high school. And I have some formal music training.
What I got out of all that though is that we're gonna need high tech pod rap. That's what I got. I just don't know why that's not the intro currently, or maybe it's the outro. Like I'm just thinking,
if you like a high tech pod rap, and you're listening, and you want to just make sure to email us inbox at hightechpod.us. And just let us know. Actually, just let's bring the socials up again.
All of them. Yes.
If you follow us anywhere on social and you'd like Chris to write a high tech pod rap, make sure he knows on one of those socials.
And I will hide all of those DMs.
He has the control.
I'm joking.
As the social media manager for the High Tech Podcast. That's great. Now, that's a lot of stuff in the socials world. This isn't your first podcast, right? I mean, like,
no.
We all listen to them, but you've been associated with a couple, or you've participated before. Like, what's your experience there?
Yeah, I'm an avid podcast listener, but in terms of being a guest on a podcast, this would be my 6th guest feature on a podcast show.
Dang.
I'm not a veteran. This is still like a learning curve for me. So yeah,
You're
doing great.
That's my background with
doing fine. Give it another few minutes. We'll see how it goes. But it's doing great so far. Yeah. just collapsing. So actually, this is not. I'm immediately disbanding the questions that we had following, and I'm going right off topic for a hot second. So, we have some questions we want to get through with Chris, but I think Chris, for those listening, what might be helpful, right? Because we have, as you know, an audience that isn't all in the same space or field of what they're looking at. From your perspective, what is a social media manager? Like, what is your goal as a social media manager? Like, if somebody had to understand it, I'm asking a leading question a little bit because I have a little bit of better understanding as Chris has educated us in the first 5 seconds as we talked to him about being a social media manager.
Him.
And I thank him every day. But for those listening, what is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna oversimplify this because there are so many variants of answers to this role. A social media manager is a manager of a brand's social media accounts, which includes monitoring conversations, comments, likes, shares, engagement, and sharing of content. So posting photos, videos, stories, live video, and all the other forms of posting. Managing the expression of the brand on social accounts and ensuring that it's consistent, cohesive, and also just being like in tune with trends and things that help you kind of break through the noise of
Okay.
Yep.
social platforms. So that's like the most simple way of explaining what a social media manager does.
That was pretty textbook too.
Yeah, I feel like that was a
pro.
solid description. That was a good elevator description. Although I will note, if you're a social media manager and you disagree with what Chris said, you can just let him know on social media again. One of these.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please just let him know. If you feel like he offended you in some way, make sure he knows.
As you're saying that though, like it connects immediately. It comes to mind like Wendy's or Duolingo, right? Like they have they're famous for their social media, and that means there's a person or a team behind them that have done what you just said, made a consistent experience, created a brand, maintained the voice of it, all that stuff across all their media forms, right? Like yes, I drive past Wendy's. Yes, Duolingo's been on my phone, but like I think first of their social media when I think of them. I don't think of like a burger or the lesson 3 last week. Like I think of their social because they've created such a strong social presence through that. So it's a Chris that's behind that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'll say this as well.
Wait, there's more.
So in branding, like a brand has a persona that they're trying to personify either in print, in digital, on the website, which is also digital. So in all of these marketing touch points, you're trying to personify something that isn't quite tangible. Like I can't touch or smell or see like Wendy's technically. Yes, I can eat their food, but like the person that is Wendy is like a made up entity thing. But her social media account is the closest I'll get to actually like having a conversation with her and feeling like she's personable, approachable, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another role that the social media manager plays. It's helping to kind of make that person feel and seem real and accessible. So
now I'm just a little creeped out by imagining Wendy from Wendy's being personified and accessible, but it's fine. No, but I think that's a really interesting point. And like, we're gonna get into tech, we're gonna get into some stuff here in a second here with Chris, but I think what we wanted to do too is just talk a little bit about what that was and talk a little bit about what you've been doing and introduce you a bit. And I think the thing that has been most of a takeaway for me working with you and figuring out what we're going to do right for the High Tech Podcast has been that like personification of like a voice of what it's going to be, right? Like I think Will and I's tactics on social media before Chris has been kind of non-existent. First of all, it's like it's like if you were fighting a war and the other side was just asleep. That was asleep. But like would occasionally wake up and be like, go that way. Like that was Will and I's strategy. But has been that like finding that voice and what you want to communicate. It's the same thing as like Will and I have seen anywhere else in the communication we've done, whether it's been teaching or both Will, you and I have done public speaking inside, Chris, you have too. Like you have a voice, you have a message you want to get across, right? And I think in social media, having that, Chris, as you've been talking with us and working with us on it, it's like having what that voice is going to be and what that message is going to be personified in everything we're doing or the engagement that we're doing. It's not about just putting out a ton of content or happy-go-lucky cat videos on social media or whatever trend is going on at that moment. Although that seems not great too.
Idea.
Not a bad idea. I mean, Ted Lasso gifts are a given, but that's different. But again, it's about like the voice of who we are or what you're doing, right? And I think for a lot of people trying to think through how they use social media, it's about, I think, it's another communication tool, right? And you can use that, you can be intentional about it and not intentional about it. I think that's something we've really been learning from you, Chris. It's like, what does it look like to be intentional with it. Also,
Yeah.
just letting you do it. That's been fun. like learning that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Very much.
That kind of rolls into this idea though. Like you're telling us a little bit about like what you do, what your field does, and I know that's not like the only thing behind why you're working with us. We're friends. All three of us went to college together. Like this is a long-standing friendship and stuff like that. But what is kind of one of your goals for our brand, right? Like we didn't know what our voice was. You helped us document
we didn't know we
it.
had a brand. Do we have a? I didn't know that. Yeah,
there's a persona. What's that?
Persona.
We wrote it all down.
I just thought we were two white guys from COVID on a podcast. I mean, that's basically what I was.
Like the rest
that's
of
what our brand was.
But you've already accomplished good things, there are some of Chris's posts already, guys, that have had greater reach than episodes that we recorded 3 years ago, and it's beautiful. His work is proving good. But like, what's one of your goals for the High Tech Podcast as you think through like what we did for the voice, what we did for the persona, all that kind of stuff?
One of my goals is honestly to get you guys in front of millions and millions of users. like just
what?
Because like, so it's in like marketing terms, it's brand awareness, but I think that your content, your personalities, what you're talking about, like the product, the service, the actual meat of value that the podcast is offering needs to get in front of a lot more people, and then the quality of it will kind of do the rest. That's been the beauty of social media in like the last 3 to 4 years. This concept of like going viral, or like a post or a few just kind of exploding. Like, you can't pay for that. You can't control that. That's simply good content intersecting people that like latch on, and then they share it, and those people share it, and it just explodes. And I know that's possible for you guys. So like, that's my like first goal, is just to ensure that more and more people get in front of like these videos and posts and et cetera, because
I'd like to say we didn't pay him to say that, folks, but he is
no,
on
that's
the
just how I
payroll,
feel.
so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So who do we need to feud with? Like, isn't that the bit? Like, do we need to get it? Like, do we take? Oh, so your rap is going to take on Drake and Lamar? Is that it?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah,
gonna
I'll
write a
beef with
rap.
both of them. I don't care. No,
That's what
I'm
the
not
world
going to do
needs.
that.
Two white guys getting involved in that argument. You know, that's
Yes.
No.
Relevancy. Let's go.
No. Abort.
So I think, like, shifting from that for just a second, I think like our brand, being us and who we are, a lot of what we do is talking about how to use tech well, how to do that well. We were trying to think of, I think, Chris, as we were talking to you about what directions we go, and we have you on and talking about things. And I thought of this here. We don't have this question here, but like, for those listening, right? I know Will and I have talked to a lot of different people, either guests or fans of the podcast, who like, they, especially I think in like the kind of like work social media world, I think is what I might call it, where it's kind of like Twitter and LinkedIn, and kind of like this idea of like, how do I get myself out there on the internet well, not to just become like viral and become this, but like just present who I am well to those who I'm interacting with.
Yeah.
Because I think that's even important in our day and age, especially in the work that I think, like, Will, you and I talk about a lot, whether it's L&D or project management or education, technology. Like, the social media work world is just as important. I wish I could come up with a better term for it. I'll call it social media. Nope, that's worse. That was
You know what? Just stick to it.
I am clipping this.
Okay, you clip that. Social media, it's a new thing. It's gonna be great. But Chris, what would be like your top advice for someone? Like maybe step back from just trying to brand for like a company like the High Tech Podcast or Harness Tech, right? Like, what would be your tips for somebody on like just using social media? Because I think you use it really well as just a person. Like, yes, you have a brand, you have music, all the stuff you do, but not all your posts are about that stuff. I think you do a really good job of presenting an authentic you on the internet and social media.
And a cute / fun example of that before he answers is I have literally had to text Chris before and be like, where are you? This Instagram picture is California. Weren't you just at my house? He's like, dude, I scheduled that 3 days ago. Whatever. I'm like, what? And then the next post is him like drinking coffee, you know, in a window at 7 a.m. and it's like 9 p.m. I'm like, how are you doing this? But
Chris looks better than me fully like in a photo shoot when I was in the band. Okay. Josh compared against Chris in waking up at 6 a.m. in his kitchen singing. Chris still looks better than I did.
Yep. With I bet you, even with a hair cap, Chris would still just be like,
no, you did not
doing vocal warm-ups, and the shit just.
Yeah, I definitely have limits.
Do you have the thing set up with your phone and your Apple Watch or whatever? So you set the phone, and then you turn, and then you go like click, and then you put your arm down real quick, and it takes.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I use this thing. This thing is my best friend.
I'm over there wondering like, who's taking Chris's pics all the time?
Yeah,
he is. Just
Apple Watch.
Let me put that on a ledge real quick. Click.
Not a sponsor, although I wish I was.
They can be if they want to. It's fine. I'd take them.
What was your question that I completely derailed?
We totally diverged from that. That was my bad. So, like the average person, right? When what would be your top recommendations of just how to use social media well, right? To present themselves authentically. I think I want to put that in as because I think that's what you do well, Chris. Like we're making these jokes about you using the Apple Watch and stuff, and that's all tech stuff about how you do the social media thing. But I think like knowing you as a person, as a friend, and looking at what you present on social media, you present an authentic version of yourself. It's not. It's the good and the bad is on Chris's social media about what he's dealing with or in that space. And so, like, what would be your recommendation for people when they're like, "How do I use social media better? Like, how can I better present myself on social media?"
I'd probably give like 2 multifaceted tips to kind of. So first I would say, I'm assuming you mean like as a brand or a company, or is this like?
I think I'm talking like the average person, like personal. I think let's back away from the company idea for a second, because a lot of our listeners might be in different companies and stuff. Like, let's be you know this, Chris. We're not pulling in a lot of like social media managers to listen to the High Tech Podcast. So I'm thinking like, I mean, they can. You should all come listen to Chris and talk to the High Tech Podcast. But like, obviously, you know, like we have a lot of like educators or people in different jobs and situations, and I think there's more and more today an expectation to try to not just present like a. I think when you're using social media well, you're not just presenting a picture, a glossy picture, but you're presenting really who you are. Well, it's a communication tool, and I think a lot of people could benefit from knowing how to use that a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. So for the average Joe or Chad, I think if you immerse yourself into it and use it frequently, that experiential experience will give you a lot of.
We need to workshop that one. Hashtag experiential.
I'm gonna try again. The more you use social media, the better at using social media you will be. I think if you're for example, me personally, like when I'm using Instagram, I'm scrolling through the feed, I'm watching videos, I'm in the comment section, I'm sharing my opinion, I'm laughing at stuff. I'm noticing the videos and photos that are like the most popular and common. I'm going to uh different accounts and seeing their personal feed and how they do like different formats and how often they use social media. I'm also like using social media for information. so I go on there and find inspo for like cooking recipes and jokes to share at work and like the latest news on President Biden. Like it's also an environment where I've entrusted um resourcing, if you will, for other facets of my lifestyle. Um so that consistent usage, I think, helps you get a better understanding of like, oh, on Instagram there's a ton of reels. So takeaway, video content gets a lot of engagement.
Yep.
On Pinterest, there's a lot of infographics and carousels. So information sharing, how to's, um, teaching in a humorous or entertaining way would do really well on Pinterest. It's like you start to make those easy, low hanging fruit takeaways and connections as you're actually in or on these channels and platforms. If you're not using it, then you kind of resort to like YouTube videos or like marketing classes, and you're really out of touch because social media is also changing daily. Like trends come and go, and um one generation is like the leading user, and 6 months away it's a new generation. Like the change is so fast and vast that if you aren't using it, you're also not staying abreast. You're not keeping up with where it's going. So usage is like the best teacher. And then also I think in terms of how you showcase yourself or like be authentic in how you personify yourself digitally, I think that's more of a personal resolve. Like I've decided for myself that I'm gonna share a mix of my music stuff and my personal lifestyle, because both embody my creativity, my enjoyment of life, who I share it with, and where I get my inspiration from to then go and make new music. So I'm fine with it not just being a personal page or just a business page, but that's something that I've resolved for myself, and then that is then expressed and showcased in my photos and videos. Um, and it's not like faked or doctored up or um, off-putting. It's like, what is Chris doing? Like that's like Chris doesn't even like coffee, and he has these 6 posts about coffee. No, I do like coffee. So when you see me at a coffee shop, you know that Chris actually spends time at a coffee shop. Or if I put out a new single, like know that I've been songwriting or at a recording studio. Like I've I made that choice, and then I've also allowed myself to get my hands dirty, if you will, and actually use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, blah blah blah. So those would be those are my 2 tips.
If
Use
there's
it, and yeah.
if there's 5 minutes of this episode anybody should listen to, it's the last 5 minutes. Chris just was able to pull together like professional social media isms, I don't know, in 5 minutes of I happened to be watching the clock, and it was a really good, I think, expression to say, like, if you want to be a premium producer, you need to be a constant consumer, right?
Yes.
If you want to be at the front of who's being seen, you need to be looking at who's being seen.
Yeah.
And you're choosing the authenticity. I think Josh and I would agree that probably reads better, but like that's a choice. And you probably, we don't have to get too far into that this episode unless you want to. It probably has its ups and downs, right? There are probably some times where it like feels a little vulnerable or feels a little tough, or it raises the anxiety. But what ultimately out of those last 5 minutes, my biggest takeaway was when Chris gets us the 1 million viewers, then he will also become the clothes and style manager for the podcast. And Josh and I are going to look fly as hell. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted.
I can't. That's just gonna be great. That's gonna be great. So that was awesome. I love that, and I think that what we can take away, of course, is practical, but also a little bit of optimistic. Like if I wanted to, there was a time Josh and I were playing this game called Valorant, and everybody that we were playing the game with was better than us, and everybody's
not even close. Like it was
still better than us.
Yeah, we were like snails. I would like to say for one day I was good, and that was the day the game came out. That was it. Like that was
because no one had figured it out yet.
Yeah, no one figured it out.
You'd be playing with these people, and they'd be like, "Make sure to roll a default on this one," and then somebody be like, "Make sure to check this rotation," and so blah blah blah. And they just I'd be like lost. And you know what I did, Chris? I went and I pulled up YouTube and I hit some live streamers and I watched them. Right, just to your point, like I was like, I can't figure this out. I don't know what to do myself. Let's stop for a second, watch some streamers, watch some people who are playing it where I'm not clicking and trying to not get killed and stuff at the moment that it's happening, and was able to figure out what they meant by some of the terminology and how they use the map certain ways and how they'd switch guns and stuff, like things that I wasn't learning by trial and error, which is what I was doing with our social media. And now it all makes sense why our social media has never been like this viral takeoff, right? I am not a constant consumer.
Yeah.
So therefore, I probably could not be a premium producer.
Yeah. All the rules that Chris just said, we broke all of them. And so
I
5 minutes described the opposite of what we were doing. Like if you
ran the other way.
You need to participate and consume. Didn't do that at all. Except for MySpace. I was great at MySpace. I miss Tom.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Tom
had the care and love to let his social media platform die before he stole our data. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. That's right. That part.
He did the world a service.
Less.
Yeah, no. I would agree. I mean, that makes sense. And I think that lines up with what you do, Chris. And that's part of the reason, like, on the business side of things, if you're an organization or you're a podcast or you're whatever, a small business, and you don't know how to use social media, it is not a bad investment to find somebody like a Chris who can help you in that space. I mean, we're not joking. The first meeting we had with Chris about this, it took like the first 5 seconds for Will and I to basically ping each other and go, well, we have no idea what we're doing.
And he does.
And he does. And I think all the stuff you're describing is a part of what you do, Chris. And I think that's what fits so well. Having a hard transition for a second, not really hard, but like, so that's some of the philosophy stuff of it. Backing up from that to the tech side of it, what is some of the, like, if you to recommend some tools or like tech practices that you've been using to help do so, like to help manage social media a little bit better, make it a little bit easier to participate more often? What's some of those tools you've been doing? I think a quick example I'll throw out is one that you've been doing is, right, you mentioned it kind of offhandedly. You schedule stuff ahead of time. That's like one thing, right? So like
batching. We call that batching.
I wanted to let you use the real term. I obviously do that.
I had to flex a little bit. Come on.
Yeah, no.
So some tools in my toolbox are Hootsuite, and what else do I use? Well, I mean, I use StreamYard to put videos. Is
Yep.
Yeah.
is that a tool? I would
Oh,
think it's
that's
a
a
tool.
tool.
Yep.
No,
'Cause
it's
it's
not
very helpful.
technology at all. It's incorrect.
Well, if you come up with a whole list, we'll get to the whole. But like, let's stop on Hootsuite for a second. So, is this a batching platform? What is Hootsuite doing for you? I've
Yeah.
seen some analytics. Like,
Yeah. So Hootsuite is kind of a all-in-one social media resource. It helps you post content on channels simultaneously.
wow,
It helps you extract data from those channels and build out reports and charts, and it helps you see what your competitors are doing. It has some social listening tools of like seeing what conversations are happening about your brand,
Hmm.
either in search, in comment sections, in um like subreddit and forum spaces. It crawls and gets that data. It's also a great tool for you to like build out your types of posts, or to
Hmm.
store your content for posting later. And it has a few other exhaustive features that I don't really need to use, but
Yeah.
it's one of those third-party apps that helps you just like do all of that in faster time and more efficiently. uh Love Hootsuite.
that's
Big fan.
awesome. I know
Those-
I knew platforms like
Curious
that existed,
on the
but
screen, too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that one that you use for like your brand, or is it it's paid up and you pretty much use it for your day job kind of thing?
There's a free version that is pretty
Good
good.
enough.
It's a good resource. The paid version is better, and I do use it at work for different clients and for internal stuff at Donovan. Um, so yeah, it's more on the business side. On the personal side, I use what is it called, for project management and task management. It's similar to Trello. I know the name.
Asana, Monday.
Asana.
There you go.
There it is.
Asana. I went
I
to
was going to
Asana.
say, does it rhyme with motion and notion? Does it mean?
Now,
Ocean.
because of
Ocean.
you guys, plug. I'm very interested in switching to Notion. So thank you.
If you or others want to accomplish that, check out our affiliate link on screen now, affiliate.notion.so/high-tech podcast. You can find out all about our use of Notion and more. Yes. Well done, Chris.
Yeah,
Well done.
nice little
yeah,
plug.
yeah. But like seriously, before that 4 or 5 episode series, I like knew about Notion and I've been using it in various ways, but I wasn't incentivized to like switch for personal use. Now I'm fully convinced.
Yeah. So there's gonna be another episode where Josh walks Chris through.
Yeah, I want Chris to adopting the template.
I love Notion. The capabilities and the variety of how I could. I'm a fangirl. It's crazy.
We did not plan this, folks. For those listening, we did not plan this at all. But it does warm my heart a little bit, especially since Notion just added charts and a whole bunch of other cool stuff. By the time this
Yeah.
episode comes out,
and calendar and
yeah, there's
I'm
a lot of other
I'm
fun
drinking
stuff.
the Kool-Aid. I am
Yeah.
drinking the Notion Kool-Aid.
Anyway, on the other side of things, you mentioned it, and we've mentioned it on the podcast a bunch of times now. Those who've been listening or following the podcast for a little while know that we use StreamYard to produce the podcast. After the long journey, those who've been listening for at least the last year know the long journey of episodes slightly changing, because Will and I thinking we found the platform finally that would solve all our problems, and then it made it worse. And StreamYard, we've now been around with a while and have been really enjoying it. But there have been a lot of features that Will and I have not used up until Chris coming on because we just didn't have time to do stuff with it. So Chris, describe a little bit some of the stuff that you've been using, especially for those listening who are doing podcasting or anything like that, how you've been using some specific features in StreamYard to kind of streamline some of what you've been doing for us.
Yeah. So I want to preface with I do a lot of photo and video editing for social media usage. And I, excuse me, historically would use like Final Cut or Adobe tools or other
take the
like,
video content out to
dupes.
something else.
Yeah. Like there's this whole multi-hour process of watching the video and clipping and editing and then outsourcing to do more editing and then
downloading and uploading
downloading and uploading and then having to it's a whole thing. And then with StreamYard now, 90% of the editing work is done. I just come in, I watch, and then I make my clips, outsource, download, and they are ready to go. And that is revolutionary to me because I literally remember sitting on my laptop and spending 3 hours to like prep one video post for Facebook and how annoying that was. So anyways, coming back in. So for high tech and our social posts, I just go into StreamYard. I'm like, okay, I know that I want to get 2 golden reels and maybe a third that could be utilized as a 30 to 45-second video. So I already have a framework. And I have that luxury because I know that my editing time is not going to be that long. But also in StreamYard, it has like the preset to edit as a reel or edit as a horizontal video or widescreen video. So yeah, those features alone makes clipping fun for me, actually. Very exciting. Like I'm happy to clip your episode.
Well,
because I know that I'm not
even the transcript, like what we do as best as we can while we're doing the episode is we'll take notes for Chris about where clips could be. Now, there's some platforms like one we formally used for 1 month until we got a full refund. That had like a clip button, like we could literally click a button, it would mark a clip or something in the back. We don't have that here yet. StreamYard, if you're listening,
yeah,
be great.
Some improvements. Yeah.
But in the meantime, Josh and I will just take notes in Notion. Surprise. If anybody was surprised by that, just saying. So, you know, and what you can do though after the fact is like I'll take some key words down as I'm talking and I'll kind of give the minute mark and you can search the transcript. You can kind of go through the transcript and find that instead of like you can either go to 20 minutes and see if it's right about where I said it was, which may or may not be true. I'm not as I try and watch the little clock. It's
Chris's hand like immediately went up and went.
Yeah, but you know, it's fine.
Is it better to listen to 5 minutes or the entire episode? You know, I mean, I give you a range. It's close.
I love it.
But that's, you know, pair the minute marker with like today. I said, you know, the beef with Drake Lamar around 19 minutes. Like that'd be funny if he wants to take that as a clip, right? But like he could look up the word beef or Drake or Lamar, and that's probably going to be in the transcript, and he can find that spot pretty quickly. Like just that stuff, you know, you can do that now with Adobe. If you downloaded this video, put it in Adobe Premiere, ran transcripting on Premiere, use the transcript and then did your work. It's like, no, just go right into StreamYard, clip, export, done. I couldn't
also
sell it better if I tried.
Another feature, if I wanted to be lazy, or if you guys don't like give me notes or preferences, the AI generation in StreamYard,
There you
where
go.
it gives me 2 or 3
Suggestions.
predetermined suggestions based off of the machine learning, and then I can watch them and decide, oh, that's actually a good clip that I probably wouldn't have noticed. I'll use that. And again, saving more time, efficient, like yeah. So
well, I think the key to remember for those listening too, like again, we're not, while we're affiliates of StreamYard, that's only because we use it. It's not, we didn't like go to StreamYard because they offered us an affiliation, mainly because we get no real offerings in affiliation. The other like so like it's really like we record everything in here. Like we're recording it here right now. Chris knows because you can see on the back end now that there's some settings and stuff we can control live while we're recording, and it makes it very easy for Will and I. And that just goes straight into what's called a studio that Chris can then go in and do all this stuff he's talking about. So it's not like even we have to move this somewhere for Chris. It's all kind of a streamlined process. So I think that's just for those like thinking about, or you're doing podcasting or doing something similar to this where you're recording media and stuff and looking to do clipping and things like that. Like I think StreamYard is really cool. Will and I have tested so many of them, folks. I promise you. And so far, StreamYard has been one of the best that we were able to find. So I think that's important.
And shout out to Chris Nessie with the Education Podcast Network for he referred us. So he got $10. He got $20 or something, and we got $10 off when he referred us in. And that's their system, right? You get like it takes money off your bill if you're a current member or whatever, which is it's good. But he's been using it for years and years and years. So it was a great referral from him, and we're thrilled to use it. But
well, those are tools. I think I want to at least have some time for our last question that I think is great for Chris. Yeah. So shifting from high tech podcasts, hijinks, and all that stuff.
Just delay a little.
Delay a little bit more. So
Ed, go ahead. I'm ready for you.
Go ahead. Okay, cool. So Chris, is social media ruining the world? Okay, this is the question. This is the question for the social media manager. If anybody's gonna know, it's gonna be Chris. Okay, is social media ruining the world? I feel like we need some fire emojis in there too. You know, and maybe a picture of my grandparents on Thanksgiving having a conversation about social media. No, but it's a serious question. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Will and I talked a little bit about this from a different angle. We were talking about it from an education angle, and we were talking about is social media basically making kids worse at being like social. Like that was the concept. Is social, because we hear this all the time. So because of social media, this is why kids can't talk to each other, and social media is just making the world worse. So what's your take on this? You know, like in all seriousness, and we're just gonna leave the banner up because I think it's hilarious. What Chris is answering.
Yes, please. Yes. That is so good. Okay. My answer is social media ruining the world. No.
Hot take.
Absolutely not. What is ruining the world is carbon emissions and plastic. So you can, if you want to actually know what's ruining the world, we can talk about that. But in terms of social media isn't ruining the world. However, I loved how you reframed your question, because that's a different answer. Is social media making it more difficult or challenging to socialize with one another? Yes, it is. The data is there, the science is there, and I've even had personal consequences with my own social experiences and how it's impacted the way that I talk to my friends or my attention span or things like that. So again, in case you missed it, listeners, viewers, social media is not ruining the world. Sorry to bust your bubble. But it does make socializing either in person or online more challenging. And I think it's because of a couple of things actually. One, we as humans, as a society, are still adjusting to the digital age, and not all of us really want to participate. So when we get on Facebook and we see we see a triggering post, or we get into a comment section and people have opinions that we don't agree with, and then we respond with long paragraphs, or we uh, cancel and block people, or we delete our apps and throw our phones. Um, some of that is
Never done that before.
some of that is this long standing anti-social, anti-digital approach, which is only going to hurt you because the digital age is not going anywhere. It's quite literally the means of how we communicate and do business, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's some of that nuance. Also, I think what is literally happening to our brains and our emotions when we're doom scrolling and arguing in the comment section and watching a 6-second video over and over and over again. Um, some of these behavior patterns are impacting and influencing um, the the way that we socialize. Like, I'm not looking at you for 6 seconds and then doing something else, or I'm not like looking at you in like timestamps.
Watch me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, speak for yourself. I do that every day. 6 seconds, you're done.
You know, I'm not sharing my opinion about the election and then walking away, or I'm not like logging you off and preventing you from sharing your response.
Could you imagine? This has got to be a YouTube skit out there somewhere, like people acting in real life
that
like they
definitely
act on
exists, yeah.
social. That's gotta exist.
Yeah, that absolutely.
Like, you know, it's different behaviors that we're engaging in. Like, I can't pause you. I can't I can't block you. You know, I, I can want to, but in real life, like, you're dealing with voices and facial expressions and an actual tangible human standing in front of you that can punch you or run you over, you know, for your thoughts and feelings. Like, it's a different means of communication. So then in turn, it impacts the other facets of how we communicate, either for better or worse. So that's my answer.
Okay.
Wow.
Look at you navigating difficult
I'm
questions.
gonna pull this up then. Right. I think I'll pull this one down. There we go. These are the considerations you just gave us. And I think that they're pretty impactful to hold on to. Like, you know, you gave around a little more detail and more context on them, but like this impact of social on us.
Mhm.
I agree with you in some ways, right? I'm not going to in any capacity make a direct comparison to say that social media is like the invention of fire or the wheel. But if I were to make that comparison, social media, like
I'm not
fire,
going to, but I'm going to. That's
Right.
basically what you did.
you got me. It's you can't put fire back. It's not going. Nobody's cutting this. Like, we are potentially seeing an era where politicians will get involved with the use of it and regulating its use, especially with underage people. We're seeing that actively happening in policy in 2024. I think that those conversations are good, but to the point that you just made, right? Like, these are some of the reasons I hate dealing with it and I refuse to engage it in some regards, right? My top use of social media is LinkedIn, and I swear it's for networking. You know, I just want to be able to meet people, connect with people, stay involved with professional folks. And for the longest time, it really stayed pretty agnostic. Now it's brought that social stuff in, just like everything else. People post their pictures of them and their coffee, them and their kids. It is what it is. I'm not against it, but I have gotten rid of Facebook. I got rid of my own Instagram. I got MySpace.
MySpace forcibly left us.
Yeah,
Even I would still have it today. Yeah.
I did. Is that what happened? Are you sure about that? Or did Facebook force it away?
That's the history I tell myself, Chris.
Oh, okay.
I just got an email this week that my Live Journal account turned 18. I didn't know I still had a Live Journal account.
Wow.
I thought Live Journal died a long time ago.
Still
I thought that
Journal. That's unfortunate.
You heard it here first. But I appreciate your positivity, Chris. I'm more on the negative, but I hear you. I think there's opportunity. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I think you took some of it down, but I think I do agree with Chris. I think there's some adjustment to technical and I to the digital age, but I would add, I think the adjustment difficulty is just that the digital age is moving so fast as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In many regards. I mean, you look at technological, we've talked about this in the podcast before. You look at technological advancement in the last decade compared to the decade before it, it's like mind-boggling how much faster things are moving. And I think that makes it hard for people to adjust at a certain level. And like Chris, you're right. There is some component to, I would argue, some of, and let's just be very frank about it. We've talked about this in the podcast before. I don't think Will and I both, although Will, you vary sometimes depending on your tin hat vibe you're given that day. Or aluminum hat. Tin hat would be weird. I don't necessarily think of the social media in itself is the problem, right? It's I think a little like you're talking about. I think the digital age adjustment side part of it. I do think the digital side of it removes some of the, Chris, I think what you're kind of getting at, it does remove some of the humanness of conversation. And so because of that, it brings out the worst in us, in humanity. Yes. I don't think social media, I will be frank and say it straight on the podcast. You can let us know, inbox at hightechpod.us if you disagree with me. But I don't think social media created the problem. I think it exacerbates. That's not the word that I'm looking for.
Exacerbates yes, is what you wanted. Yes.
I'm really struggling.
whatever chimera you just created that I don't want you to say again.
It's not just me. Words are hard.
Well, Will just said, I think it makes the problem in us worse in some ways. I think it gives us an avenue to make things worse. Like it's there we go. Thank you for the spelling, Will, if you will. But because like I say this as a joke about the violence, internet causing more violence, video games causing more violence. You're right. There's never been conflict before social media. Like this is also part of who we are. Like humanity has disagreed with each other, and we don't do it well. And I think social media just takes, in some ways, to your point, Chris, I think it brings that out a little bit in us, and then in some ways makes it harder for us to figure out probably how to communicate face to face in ways that we haven't been used to, because we're so used to, like you're saying, Chris, like we're so used to being in that environment that it becomes harder when you're not in that space. So that's that's my take. I think
we're all ready to fight. Your point is we're all ready to fight. Social media just takes the gloves off. Am I right? Like we're always all ready to fight. Most of us, I think in social and dynamics where we have some etiquette or some sense of each other's feelings or desires, we'll be more polite or we'll hit softer, and it's all coming off for social.
Yeah. I mean, Josh, you honestly just made the best point. Like problems and mediums of conflict are inevitable human like moments and situations, and sure they happen on social media, but it's not inherently the cause of problem making. We have problems, and then those problems or those feelings as a byproduct of those issues find their way on social media or forums or customer reviews or like whatever it is, like, but that doesn't mean that a customer review is destroying the world, or like a phone isn't destroying the world, or a website or a car. Well, I, if you hit enough people, but like it's
Dark.
it's kind of a fallible question, because the question is implying that social media by itself is a problem and I'm not. But the truth is, humans are often their own problem. They're often their own sabotaging source, and we love to blame shift and like finger point of like, well, this can't be me. Like there has to be something outside of me that is causing me to then have issues. That doesn't negate the fact that social media brings, as I've said before, a lot of challenges and complications. But to just blanket statement, social media is ruining the world, social media is ruining marriages. No, it's not. Like, let's be honest. Like, no, it's not.
Chris is taking his gloves off tonight. I love it. I love it.
I feel like this needs to be a part 2. This was a much better conversation than I intended it to be.
Like, take accountability, take some responsibility, and let's look at things from a more holistic perspective and see the role that social media plays. But let's not lie to ourselves. You know, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
We think we all just agreed that this is going to be another episode. This conversation, this one question will be a whole episode.
Yes.
Maybe we get a fourth person involved, maybe not. But oh my gosh, that's awesome. Chris, thank you across the board, right? Thank you as our friend. We appreciate you. Much love. But also thank you for coming on for this episode and just joining the pod and being on Team Pod. You know, their podcast today with professional teams with a producer behind them. We can't do that. Chris doesn't have every Tuesday to give us blah, 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 but he is now the person personifying High Tech Podcast. So when you see our social, that's that style he bring in, and this is the person behind it. So I hope you folks will be gentle, keep your gloves on when dealing with Chris. We appreciate
or not.
that.
I was going to say,
ready with the smoke.
I was going to say what that means. I was going to say what that means is if you see something you don't like on social media, it's Chris's fault, not Will and I.
That's right.
No,
I'll take that.
Let him know. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, no, seriously, Chris, thank you for joining us on here and joining the podcast journey in general. I think it has been a lot of fun having you the last couple months on the social media side, both from just what you've been able to do, but also just being able to joke with you about podcast stuff and things. Like Will and I really just brought another into the fold for us to have conversations about podcast stuff and annoy the other people around us. Not a part of that group. But so we appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to continuing that journey a bit. But since we said we're not doing separate intro and outro, I didn't really know how I was going to transition this, so I'm just going to go into it. On the next episode of the High Tech Podcast, we have no idea what's happening. We have not actually planned that episode. Maybe it's part 2 of the social media conversation, because I'm digging this. It's like a whole episode.
I'm down.
But we'll next week you'll know more than we do now. That's for sure. So whatever.
That's the fun of it.
That's the fun of it.
Chris,
yeah, we don't know.
We have a little bit of a closing bit. You've probably heard it a few times, but I want you to roll into it with us. So you're not gonna don't worry about anything except the cheers. You ready? You're gonna be ready for us to join our cheers when the time comes?
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
We'll look intently at you when it's time for that, because this is the only scripted part of the High Tech Podcast. Anyway, hey, folks, that's a wrap on another week. Empowering minds,
embracing tech. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yes.